Mr. Lorenz, I suppose
Thank
we're
you.
going to get started.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to meet with council and staff and share some information about South Suburban. Our South Suburban board is here. Maybe you want to do introductions. John, go down the line. And
John Ostermiller, South Suburban Board.
That's who he is.
Mike Anderson, South Suburban Board.
Hey, got your South Suburban Board? Well, I'm not a board member.
and you are?
But I'm Joanne Gould. I'm manager of recreation.
Steve?
I'm Steve Shipley, the manager of finance.
We wanted, if we can, start with a video of South Suburban. It's a little bit dated, but we always like to show it because it gives people an awareness what all South Suburban provides in the community. And it's about 11 minutes, I think, and then I have a short presentation. I put a packet in front of you with an outline of the agenda and some information that I will go through. So if we're ready?
I got
Sue Roster just walked in, who's also a member of the board.
locked out.
Locked out.
Is that door locked?
It shouldn't.
Roll them.
I'm sorry. Hold on just a minute.
Okay.
Losing
It's not accepting my fingerprint, I guess.
Won't be the first time.
This modern technology, you know, kind of throws us all for a loop every now and then. Debbie, if you want me to make some comments before that board, I will be down there for a meeting at Dr. Cobb.
Oh, good.
Just
That's
after
perfect.
that
That's your,
meeting.
your district.
Just after, yeah, and just after that meeting. That's
There's a challenge in providing park and recreation services to a population that's accustomed to being well served. And that challenge is best countered by asking, how does a district stay fresh, innovative, and responsive? For South Suburban Park and Recreation District, south of Denver in a vibrant suburban region, the formula for managing well includes 3 essential elements: listening, planning, and performing. That's what South Suburban has done for 50 years, and that's how it rewards its citizens for their loyalty and support. South Suburban is a prior Gold Medal Award winner, yet it may be helpful to look at how the district is able to serve well by continually providing facilities and programs to meet the needs of its citizens. South Suburban has a long history of listening to its constituents. A citizens group in 1999 heard what improvements residents wanted to finance and created the Gold Medal 2020 plan for a district-wide renovation and construction plan. Taking the case to the voters allowed citizens to lift tax restrictions and approve $20 million in general obligation bonds for specific recreation centers and athletic fields, and a $1 mil property tax increase for open space, parks, and trail expansion. But it didn't take until 2020 to see significant improvements. The opening of the Lone Tree Recreation Center in 2003 in a fast-growing municipality, and the debut of the Buck Community Recreation Center in densely populated Littleton in 2005 were highly visible and successful promises to voters. The purchase of a multifaceted recreation complex, which had been in bankruptcy, expanded the offerings in the east region of the district and provided the Colorado Avalanche NHL team with a highly visible practice rink. Conversion of a 90-acre landfill and acquisition of adjacent land to assemble a 140-acre multi-use athletic complex with 5 artificial turf fields, the Lorenz Regional Park, answered immediate needs and provided possibilities for more fields in the future. citizen users noticed immediately. The district's customer approval rating went from 75 to 90% in a 4-year period. An essential element is planning, with a constant sense of what's needed next. South Suburban has a $43 million operating budget, with 218 full-time employees and over 1,400 seasonal employees to take care of almost 3,800 acres of parks. The district's facilities include 4 recreation centers, 4 golf courses, 114 athletic fields, 26 multi-use courts, 58 playgrounds, 8 pools, 69 tennis courts, 2 ice arenas, 82 miles of trails, a BMX track, 2 dog parks, 3 skate parks, a botanic garden, and much more. South Suburban serves over 140,000 residents in 6 cities and 3 counties along Denver's constantly expanding southern boundary. From high-income communities to blue-collar urban towns, the district is a mix of interesting demographics, ethnicity, and lifestyles. The district's most visited sites are places like Hudson Gardens, the new recreation centers, and the always busy athletic fields, trails, and parks. But as former board member and Littleton Mayor Jim Taylor points out, citizens know they're being well treated, and they are being heard.
Our citizens are well served by South Suburban Park and Recreation District. They keep the parks well maintained, the recreation centers are well equipped, and programs are what the citizens really want, so they respond well to our needs.
South Suburban board members, stretching back 50 years, established a philosophy of local access to neighborhood recreation and regional complexes for organized and intense athletics and league sports. Yet the district has always been able to balance the neighborhood needs with the recognition that suburban communities are constantly evolving, with new residents, developing families, longer-term empty nesters, and retirees and seniors. This neighborhood development cycle is not new. Legacy homeowners age and sell. Young people move in and then move up in housing as their families grow and their recreation needs change. Add to that cycle the newer elements of at-risk youth and awareness of healthier outdoor adventure, especially in Colorado, and the competition for leisure time, and you'll see a district like South Suburban adapt its offerings and programs. With programs like South Suburban's Living Well and NRPA's Step Up to Health Obesity program, there's a greater need for skate parks, trail networks, and full-scale exercise and aquatic centers. This district's diverse population area also plays a role. The urban core is just a light rail ride away to downtown Denver, but citizens want to relax and recreate when they arrive home. Like much of the West, there's a sizable Hispanic population in specific communities and evident in the leagues and activities.
Sheridan has a very diverse population, and I think that South Suburban is meeting the challenges because they all have the same kinds of desires and goals that they're trying to achieve. The parks, the trails, the ballparks, that is the foundation of Sheridan's community, and South Suburban has helped us build that.
And the populations of core cities like Littleton, a strong base from the 60s and 70s, are aging but still vibrant, active, and not content to fade into obscurity. Long-range planning for South Suburban includes the obvious, such as land acquisition and facilities expansion. A major feature of South Suburban is the South Platte River, located in the heart of this district. As a leader in the South Platte Working Group, South Suburban helped to obtain $25 million in grants and matching funds to assure that the South Platte Management Plan preserves parkland and open space along the Platte's banks as a nature laboratory for school children and amateur naturalists and birdwatchers. The fact that there's the 14-mile Greenway dual trail for walkers, cyclists, and joggers leading to downtown Denver opens the river's atmosphere to thousands every day. The South Suburban Foundation has long had a major role in implementing the Greenway Plan. Likewise, the 80-mile-long Highline Irrigation Canal has a significant presence in the backyards of many South Suburban homes, and the district is an active player in preserving the canal for recreational use. Among the less visible district initiatives are establishing responsible herbicide and pesticide policies. When the West Nile virus became a threat, the district was a leader in identifying and remediating potential problem areas for the mosquito-borne disease. And with conservation awareness top of mind, the energy-saving practices at recreation centers and in irrigation management take on even more importance. Visible, yet vital. That's how to describe the most innovative aspect of the district's operations. South Suburban's website and social media allow customers to register for classes and programs online, rent picnic shelters, even obtain team schedules and tea times. The website is a marketing tool that helps track customer preferences. At least 100 questions a month are answered from district patrons. The heavy investment in computer systems also allows the district to manage point-of-sale transactions for everything from daily basics to golf shop merchandise. And employees use the intranet sub-hub for internal communication and convenient forms reference. What couldn't have been done 10 years ago is now routine at South Suburban. There is no question that South Suburban provides its audiences with easily accessed facilities and support. Whether it's something as basic as the design of a warm water therapy pool or the offering of programs for a variety of age groups, South Suburban keeps its ear to its constituents.
South Suburban is an extraordinary recreation district. When we as a community think what's important about our community, it's always in the top three. The other one is education, and then maybe just overall quality of life and housing. South Suburban is extraordinary.
Volunteers are important in all of South Suburban's consumer outreach. They may be leading nature walks, serving lunch at a senior event, or coaching teams and officiating. The interest in the district's programs is demonstrated by the depth of volunteer support. The ability to recommend new ideas or comment on what's working and what's not is easy to manage through face-to-face contact and the website. In fact, full-time community relations managers are responsible for keeping pace with the changing needs of neighborhoods, as well as special populations. Despite South Suburban's successes and its long history of awards, especially in the past 8 years, that 2020 goal is part of the overall fabric of serving its community well. In 2008, a new citizens group updated the 2020 plan to continue advancing facilities and programs. The re-emergence of young families requires updating of play-friendly spaces. Encroaching growth reduces the inventory of available open space. Athletic programs for young people constantly have to be developed that compete with the time taken by video games, Facebook, and TV.
One of the best things about South Suburban is being part of an organization that's been first-rate for a long time. And it's a challenge on a daily basis to maintain those standards to enable us to be first-rate. We're not just first-rate as a board, we're first-rate as a staff, we're first-rate as programs, parks, open space, trails. Everything we do for the residents. And that's what the challenge is to maintain that and go beyond it.
Colorado's South Suburban Park and Recreation District is one of the most admired in the nation. It's secure in offering the best to its citizens, and it's avoided controversy because of its style of management and its practice of listening before acting. The district is not only worthy of recognition, it is emulated for what it's been able to do for 50 years. South Suburban demonstrates every day that it continues to serve well by managing well.
Well, I hope in watching that you saw something about South Suburban you didn't know before and maybe got inspired to try something new like a Zumba class or the batting cages, miniature golf, spinning. So we have a lot of activities. We hope you'll partake in them when you get the chance. I put together some information here that I'd kind of like to lead you through. And as we go through this, if you have any questions, please interrupt me. I saw some of you looking at it, looking ahead while the video was on. But so we'll try to go through it fairly quickly. The first page, we talk about net operating revenues. And Littleton's assessed value, the question always comes up, what do we pay in taxes? So we've broken down our operations, the abatements, the 1 mill, and the debt service. This was a 2011 mill levy, 6.869. You see the amount of money that it produced. The mill levy in 2012 is 7.034. That was because of the abatements and debt services. The property tax assessments went down. You can raise your debt service mill levy slightly. Then we have the next line is net operating revenues from facilities. I want to point out to you that Littleton Golf and Tennis is in a negative in here, and that's very unusual. Normally, we plan to make a profit at Littleton Golf and Tennis. It was built with revenue bonds. There are no tax dollars in Littleton Golf and Tennis, and the goal is to have it break even each year. Golf is down nationally, golf is down statewide, and golf is down at all of South Suburban facilities, and so we're going to work real hard to correct that next year. The Buck Community Recreation Center, you can see, is subsidized by quite a bit. That's primarily the aquatic facility. Aquatics facilities are very heavy in manpower, and you have to have lifeguards there from when you open till you close, and normally you have to have more than one. So we're holding our own on the recreation centers. We were a little concerned when Lifetime Fitness opened and 24-Hour Fitness opened new places. I think there's 5 around our district, but we are holding our own. And I hear a lot of positive comments from the community about Buck. Harlow Pool, all of our outdoor pools lose a little bit of money. When I started 45 years ago, outdoor pools made money. The ice rink made money. But as things have changed in the community, all the other avenues that people have to go recreate and participate in, the outdoor pools are losing a little bit, and they're popular, but they do lose a little bit of money. South Platte Park, I think most of you are aware that Littleton owns South Platte Park. We have a management contract with the city to manage it. All the employees work for South Suburban. The city matches us in the operating funds. Our figure here is slightly higher than the city's match because of how we allocate our park rangers to down there to do extra work and along the South Platte River. But that's, to me, is a great joint relationship, and the community really benefits by South Platte Park. So we have a actual operating loss from our recreation facilities in the city. The next line down is estimated park and trail maintenance expenses, $1,259,000, and that's direct cost to maintain the parks within the city. Hudson Gardens is kind of a special use facility for us. South Suburban owns the assets, but we have a management contract with the Hudson Gardens Foundation Board, and we subsidize that with $350,000 a year direct management fee, and then we provide some in-kind services. The administrative and general overhead expense at South Suburban is about 18%. Briefly, that's things that aren't directly related to parks or recreation facilities. Our managers of those facilities' salaries are included, but that's our IT department, communication department, HR department, the top administrative expenses, the board's expenses, and boy, I tell you, that's high. And our insurance is about $350,000 a year. So it's those types of expenses that it's easier to centralize than distribute through all the facilities and programs. And then, we have a net operating revenue attributable to Littleton is actually a positive. But then we have capital expenses, and we only went back to 2007, but we spent over almost $4,500,000 in capital expenses in Littleton during that 5-year period. And we also have been very aggressive in getting grants and donations, and there's details later on in this packet about where that money comes from, but that's about $3 million. So we put about $7,500,000 into capital improvements in Littleton just the last 5 years. Towards the bottom of the page, we have parks and trails. We have 125 acres of developed parks, 560 acres of open space, 30-plus miles of trails. Average maintenance cost for a developed park is almost $9,000. For an open space, it's a lot less. It's about $300 per acre. I'm talking per acre. concrete or asphalt trail like the Mary Carter Greenway is about 1,800, and a crusher fine trail like the Highline Canal is just under 500 per mile.
Dave, before we go to the next page, can you, probably everyone else in the room knows, but the annual debt service of $438 on the revenue bonds from the golf course and the tennis facility, how many more years do we have?
I think it's 2019, Steve, is it not?
2018 or 2015, we have 2 revenue bonds on them.
But it won't see full revenue receipt then until 2019 or?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that facility, Littleton Golf and Tennis, the tennis is doing well, extremely well with the block time. The golf is well, we're hurting a little bit. On the next page, what I did here is, from my point of view, many Littleton residents go east of Broadway. A lot of the citizens don't even know where the city boundaries are. And so we included the parks and facilities we have west of University. And we put that on here so you get an idea. South Suburban Ice Arena, we don't have one in Littleton, but it's very close. The Goodson Recreation Center, you can see it does a lot better than the Buck Community Recreation Center, primarily because it doesn't have that very expensive aquatic facility, and we have a lot more programs there. We have racquetball courts and pottery kiln, gymnastics center that I think Michael might be familiar with, at least his family is, and so there's more programs there and there's more revenue opportunities. We have the Colorado Journey and the batting cages. I put those on here because, as most of you probably know, Cornerstone Park is not in the city of Littleton, it's in the city of Inglewood, but it certainly serves Littleton residents. And those are both built with revenue bonds. There's no tax dollars in the miniature golf or the batting cages. Franklin Pool loses a little bit of money. So we have a net operating revenue from those facilities. The park expenses there are just over $1 million in our administrative fees. And we put almost $3 million into capital projects in that area west of University. That doesn't include Sheridan or that area, it's just to the Littleton area. And then grants, almost $900,000. And then I have the list of the developed acres, open space, and trails. You can read those if you have any questions there. But we know a lot of people from the Littleton area do use the Highline Canal and go over past Broadway to Goodson and the Ice Arena, and certainly Cornerstone Park. On the next page, number 3, capital expenses in the city of Littleton. Finance Department put down the actual projects that we've done and the amount of money that we've spent in Littleton in those 5 years. If you have any questions on them, you can read down through that. And we also put the capital on facilities west of University, and you can read down through that, about $3 million. And then the next column down, we have intergovernmental revenue for capital in the city of Littleton. That's money that was received by South Suburban. Arapahoe County Open Space, $1.5 million. City of Littleton on joint projects, over $700,000. Community Development Block Grant, $30,000. GOCO grant revenue, $740,000. Most of that was the South Platte Working Group, plus we've had a couple other grants like for Reynolds Landing and Winnetka Ponds. South Suburban Park Foundation put a little bit of money in there. And then we've also showed the intergovernmental revenue for the area west of University. The next page is park maintenance costs by facility in Littleton. You can read down, these are the facilities we actually have in the city, developed, whether they're open space, miles of trails, and what the maintenance cost is. On the next page, we have properties west of University, and there you'll see Cornerstone Park, which is a fairly significant park in terms of acreage and the expense that I think certainly serves the Littleton residents. The maps I love, they come out of our POS system, and the first one is Buck Community Recreation Center, and the small circle is 1 mile, the large circle is 5 mile, and they're color-coded by numbers of users, and the code is on the bottom. So you can see where people come from who use the Buck Center. The dark red is where most of the users come from. The orange is the area that I was talking about, west of University, And then you can see other areas. People actually come from quite a range to use that facility. I love looking at these. They give us a real idea of our demographics. Harlow Pool, you can look at. You see that. The next one is Littleton Golf and Tennis Facility. Again, you see most of the users come from within that 5-mile range, and the heaviest concentration, of course, is 1 mile, which is not unexpected. The batting cages, a little different demographic there, and the miniature golf course, Colorado Journey, where users are coming from, and the Goodson Recreation Center, and you see that quite a few people actually from the Littleton area use the Goodson Recreation Center. And the South Suburban Ice Rink is there, as well as the Franklin Pool. If you have any questions on that, we'll be happy to answer them. Any questions so far? Have I gone too fast? Nope. A lot of information, I know, coming at you at once. Maybe take a moment and give you a breather. Yes?
Just by way of appreciation, thanks for the work you guys are doing on the area north, on the north side of Kettering Park. That's been a conversation we've had before, just in terms
For many a year.
of keeping the underbrush down. But I was over there the other day, it looks good.
Good.
So,
That's one of those areas that half the people like it
yeah,
rugged and half the people like it clean, and you can't ever please everybody, but we're certainly aware of the problem,
yeah, I appreciate that.
the vagrants and the people hiding out there. And
Exactly, yeah, for the neighbors, it's a big concern. Quick question, talk a little bit about you got the I guess it's intergovernmental revenue for capital in the city of Littleton, so the Arapahoe County open space for you guys is strictly acquisition, is that correct? Or is it facilities enhancement?
No, we every year we have different projects. I'll cover that in a minute, what we're doing for this year, but we're allowed to submit 2 grants per year.
Okay, but it's for capital improvement, it's not for any sort of
Capital
maintenance?
Yeah, being you brought that up, maybe I'll do my editorial comment. As I think most of you know, South Suburban does not get any shareback money from Arapahoe County Open Space. That's kind of a sore spot with our board, and we really talked to the commissioners when they were doing the reauthorization, but they weren't willing to change it. But we're the second largest park and recreation district in Arapahoe County. Aurora is the largest, and we don't get a dime. We're eligible for 2 grants a year, $250,000, and they're competitive grants, we don't always get them. Plus, we have to match them with, I think it's $62.5 for each one. And yet the city gets the direct share back dollars, as the other cities do.
So is your million, and I appreciate your comments, and sort of wanted to get that out there, just because it is interesting that you don't get any excess money for maintenance of the extensive facilities. But the $1.5 million you've got in here, then, if it's a couple of 250 grants, the source of the rest of that is that?
Mostly South Platte Working Group projects.
Okay.
Where we worked with GOCO, and that's where a lot of the GOCO money came from. The South Platte the Arapahoe County Open Space, City of Littleton put in money, and we put in money.
So this is stuff like the parking facility over by?
South Platte Park.
Yes.
The parking, the restroom facility, the fishing piers too, the shelter by Hudson Gardens, the Enzer property, the Lee Gulch property, the Reynolds Landing property, the Oxbow property, the Murray property, the Big Dry Creek Trail, the Big Dry Creek Trailhead, and the, what do we call it, West Bellevue parking lot or? Trailhead. Pardon?
Trailhead.
Parking lot and trailhead. So those were all the projects that were successfully developed during that 3-year cycle.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
One of the items I had down there was to talk. Yes.
Phil?
Jerry had a
Jerry.
first question.
I just want to get oriented on the map, thank you. I just want to get oriented on the map. If I look at the Buck Rec Center, so Broadway would be which line, and I can't quite make it out. Is it the one that, just to the right of the red, pretty much? Broadway?
I think so, yes.
So that is likely, that's probably Broadway, you think?
Yes.
And Santa Fe is whereabouts, you think?
Well, it'd be,
Parallel to the river. The river's there, showing between the red and yellow would be the river. And it would be parallel to the
It's
river.
hard to see on this map,
Yeah, it would help me to understand it a little bit better. I don't know zip codes that well.
but I'd take it from
I only know one.
the Buck Center a mile out and then 5 miles out.
It's still, if somehow if you could identify streets, it sure helped me out.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
The zip codes of 80112, 121, 112, and 122, that's Holly and Arapahoe. I noticed, like, on the Buck Center, this right here, that's the intersection of Holly and Arapahoe.
Where is that once again?
Oh, I'm sorry, you know where it is? It's one over. It's right here, yes. I'm sorry, it's right here. Which? 80121, 122, 111, and 112. Very confusing, but it's about, I think you can see I-25.
You can sort of see I-25.
And that Holly and Arapahoe is about an inch to the west.
You can see the cities on here too. You see Cherry Hills Village,
See that one?
and Greenwood Village, Centennial.
Yeah. Thank you.
That was it.
Good.
David?
Yes.
With the creation of the Buck Center, we used some proceeds, and there had been the senior center that was on the south side of Littleton Boulevard. I know over the years, there's been some comments from some of the seniors about, is the Buck Center as hospitable as the senior center in some ways. Have we ever done any kind of analysis, or has the district done any kind of analysis with that transfer and where the seniors are and some of their attitudes, or how they perceive the value proposition now with the Buck Center?
Well, when we had the Littleton Community Center, which was the old medical center, it's a senior citizen center, it was really limited in terms of ability to what we could provide. It was mostly card games and a pool table and lunches. And clearly the demographics and the fact that seniors are getting much more active than seniors did 20, 30 years ago. And so we really looked at the needs for the community, and that's why we called it the Buck Community Recreation Center, and not just a recreation center, because we wanted to combine the senior population with the needs of the community. From what I hear, and my belief is the seniors have learned to adopt that. They had concerns about too many young people there getting run over. It wouldn't be as hospitable. But the ones I know use it and love it. You go down there in the morning or at lunchtime and you'll see 3 or 4 tables of ladies playing cards. The lunches are well used. We run a senior program out of there. The therapy pool is loved by the seniors. That's one of the things they really wanted that they didn't have at Buck. So from my knowledge, it's been merged completely well and very successfully.
And for a while there was the medical care clinic was vacant, and now there's at least a part-time use of
We
that.
have, on Mondays, we have a group in there that's running it right.
And does that work on Mondays when the senior lunch is on Thursdays? Have we ever taken a look at moving that around, or
Well,
is that not a mix?
The medical center was what you used to have at Bemis Library, which was done on Mondays. And I think maybe there's a different audience who uses the medical clinic than comes to the senior lunches.
Recognizing there's a kind of a dividing line or potential with Littleton Boulevard there, has anyone ever commented on, we do have a crossing there, right, Charlie?
Yeah.
Okay, has anyone ever mentioned about is that a problem, is that a barrier, or what kind of reaction do you hear from folks on that?
I've never heard anybody complain. I'll ask Joanne, who's manager of our recreation facilities, if she knows there's any issue there, but.
I've not heard that.
And then as maybe you start to talk about 2012 and the potential sale of the Jameson property, that's going to be capital revenue from the city locations as well.
That's correct. Mr. Taylor.
David, you could verify for me on these maps, just above your 1 mile circle, there's another almost square in dots, is that the city of Sheridan outline?
Looks like it says Sheridan.
It's
Which map are you on?
it's the dotted line right above the 1 mile circle dotted line.
Purple.
80110.
That's Inglewood as well.
Yeah.
I think it's Inglewood, Jim.
No, Inglewood is the pale, in that first Buck Recreation Center, that little light green goes up, that's part of Inglewood that extends into Denver, going up almost to College View area.
80110 is mostly Inglewood.
And it's also the city of Sheridan is 80110.
I can't answer your question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, faintly, you can barely make out Sheridan just in the lower left-hand corner of that little box.
But what is that purple boundary designating?
The purple box.
I think that's the city limits of Sheridan, frankly.
The purple hash mark?
The purple dash line, that's almost
There's a
square.
little one.
That's different on the different maps.
No, it's the same.
Oh, is it the same?
Okay, it's the same all of
Yeah,
it.
without
They
screen
wanna know what
identifier.
this is and what that is.
That is Arapahoe County. It's not incorporated in any.
I think that little square is Arapahoe County. I think that's a piece of land that Arapahoe County owns up there.
Yes.
The one that you're talking about directly up from the Buck Community Recreation Center, I honestly can't tell you. I don't think that's Sheridan all the way there.
Well,
They don't
it's-
come that far out.
The eastern boundary of that, if you, the right side boundary of that is Santa Fe Drive, which is the boundary of Sheridan. And the little pale green arm that goes up there is in the city of Inglewood, and Sheridan goes almost up to that point. It goes to Dartmouth.
Sure.
I believe the dotted line, Jim, is the boundaries of Sheridan, because the dotted lines around all of this are the district boundaries. And there, there's a little break in there because Englewood is not part of the district, and
Right.
so that's the dotted. And the reason why it's pale green is that's the 80110 zip code.
No, it's pale green because of its usage.
Right.
I know, but the usage is by zip code.
Dave,
So
maybe you
that's-
could get back to us via email. Maybe you could get back to us via email what those are designating.
I think Phil is right in terms of that. When I look at it here with the boundaries, I looked at this in terms of the concentric circles and where people are coming from. I wasn't looking at the various city boundaries, but yeah, I think Phil's right when I look at it now and think about it. If there's any change, we'll let you know.
Okay.
Anything else? I wanted to go back to the Arapahoe County open space, and as most of you know, when they did the reauthorization, they're allowing up to 20% for maintenance. And so the city is now getting 20%, and we'd like to continue to work with you on sharing those maintenance dollars like we're doing on the Stearns Park dredging. You're putting money into it, we're putting money into it. And I've seen your report that your task force has about acquiring additional land. And I can tell you that our board is concerned about keep buying land because it takes money to develop and it takes money to maintain. And we're starting to hit that saturation point. We certainly want to work with you on those key acquisitions, but would like to work with you going forward even more on using some of your Arapahoe County open space dollars for development and maintenance on projects. And when I look around the city, there's so much more we could do to some of the parks to upgrade them. Playgrounds are very popular, they're very expensive. There's a lot of new equipment out there that we could add. Some cities are putting shelters over playgrounds. If you have young children and you go out there on a playground in the middle of the afternoon, those slides and equipment can be hot. There's just wonderful things we can do. One of the grants we have for Arapahoe County Open Space this year is to expand the skateboard park in Cornerstone. And I know that's not in the city, but it is certainly adjacent because we hear all the parking problems from the city residents when we have soccer tournaments down there. But I'd like to at least open the door for discussion that maybe some of your open space dollars could be used for Cornerstone Park improvements. We need a paved parking lot down there. We have part of the park that's not developed, and we could put something new, some new amenity in there. I just think we ought to open that door for a conversation going forward, as well as all the other parks in the city, to really look at them critically and say, what can we do together? We're applying for an Arapahoe County Open Space Grant to expand the skateboard park, which is very popular. And when we built that years ago, we had wood structures in there that the children use, and they really wear out with all the use. And we're putting a new, more of a metal fabric in there that will last longer, and also expanding the park slightly to do some of the things that the young people like to do with rails and sliding like you do on banisters and that. We also have a Great Outdoors Colorado grant and an Arapahoe County Open Space grant to improve the ball fields, which are just the other side of Bellevue. Pave the parking lot, put in a shelter there so people who go to, we have 3 lighted fields over there. They go to games and get in out of it. We're going to put a small playground because we find that a lot of people come to the games and they bring their families and small children. So we're doing that. So we continue to work on making improvements to our facilities. And we do appreciate the cooperation we've had from the city in the many, many years since I've been here on joint projects. I did want to mention Hudson Gardens just for a minute. As you will recall, the city agreed to fund up to $400,000 of improvements at Hudson Gardens, primarily the children's garden. And Arapahoe County said, no, you can't use your open space money for a facility that charges admission. That affects us not only at Hudson Gardens, but other facilities like outdoor swimming pools and that. So we're trying to work with Arapahoe County Open Space and their attorney and their board to get them to either modify that or rescind it, because I certainly think Hudson Gardens meets all the criteria of the Arapahoe County Open Space Program in terms of environmental education and trails and open space and beautification. And we haven't heard back from them. We've written letters, and we just encourage you to not spend that $400,000 on something else yet. The worst case scenario, I think the Hudson Gardens Board, and John Osmiller and I sit on it, as well as the next council member and mayor of Littleton, Dennis Reynolds, we're prepared to say that Hudson Gardens will not charge an admission fee if that's what it takes to get that money to do these capital improvements to bring people there. That hurts us in the long run because admissions, as you develop the gardens more with things like the children's garden that takes more and more maintenance, you need a revenue stream to maintain it. And if we can't charge admission, where's that revenue stream going to come from? And also the admissions apply for scientific and cultural art district match. So it affects us in several ways. So please be patient while we try to work through this. And again, I'd be glad to answer any questions there.
Dave?
Yes.
Is it possible to have a discrete entrance to the children's section?
Not where it's going to be located within the...
Just no way to do that?
Well, there's always a way.
Oh.
But if we don't charge for them to get in the gardens, if they have to pay to get into the children's garden, that's the same issue that Arapahoe County has.
No, but what I'm saying is there a way to not charge for the children's and charge for the rest? As in, they could get access to this without getting access to the rest of it?
Based on its location, it would be more difficult, but that's an idea that we could certainly consider.
I mean, because I'm thinking, one of the ideas was to kind of lure families there, right?
Yeah.
And if they get lured for the children, then maybe they would come around and go to the whole thing.
We're exploring all options, and we're just trying to get an interpretation from Arapahoe County first. The other thing we've talked about is how many free days will we have to have a year to allow it to happen? Is it 1 day a week? Is it 2 days a week? X number of days during the summer? Another suggestion that I've made is if the county won't, one of the suggestions was if Arapahoe County would use some of their open space dollars to fund some of our needs at Hudson Gardens, maybe all Arapahoe County residents would get free admission to the gardens. The other program I suggested that if Littleton's giving us $400,000, if that allow us to have admissions, Littleton's $400,000 would be prepaid admission, so anybody in the city of Littleton would get free admission. So we're exploring as many alternatives as we can.
Dave, is there something that we could or should be doing in support of the discussion?
If you have access to any of the Arapahoe County Open Space board members or the county commissioners, I'd certainly tell them that you're sitting on $400,000 that you'd like to see. What did I say?
We're all looking at,
Oh.
Just found a big rock on my rucksack.
Bruce?
David, I think.
We might know one or maybe even more commissioners.
I understand that.
And Dave, I only know a little side conversation on that. There is a legal interpretation issue that they're trying to work out. I think it's, at some point here, it was very much tied up in legalese.
It is, and I've read the authorization, and there's nothing in there that prevents it, in my opinion, but I'm not a legal. Ron Carl was the open space attorney, and he got promoted to Arapahoe County attorney, so that now they have a new attorney working with the open space, and I was told that they've been given the issue to try to resolve.
And David, before you move on, just for council's knowledge, at some point, I don't think we've got it scheduled, Charlie Bloss and myself and Dave will meet to discuss that maintenance question and then potentially bring a proposal back to the council in terms of our maintenance needs versus South Suburban's maintenance needs within the city of Littleton. And then, David, for my edification, and knowledge, can you tell me what, if any, business plan associated with the children's park was done? 400,000 seems like and maybe you guys talked about this and I can talk to you offline, but it seems like it's a lot for the city to put forward. Was there surveys done? Do we know that if we build it, they will come?
We believe if we build it, they will come. We're working with a design firm out of Fort Collins that has a lot of experience with this. Rich Meredith, who's the CEO of Hudson Gardens, has been doing a lot of the groundwork. And we just believe that we need an attraction down there. We've looked at a lot of different options over the years. We visited other facilities. He's looked at demographics from children's gardens around the country. They do bring in people. Parents are willing to pay to take their children to activities. And so we believe it will be ultimately successful. It's probably $700 to $1 million to design, depending on how elaborate you want to go.
Yeah. And Shannon Carter from the county is keeping us in the loop on what's happening with the legal interpretation.
You mentioned the maintenance issue, and we really appreciate that. But with the money that the city gets, I really think we have an opportunity to work together to make some significant improvements in parks throughout the city to really make them stand out and shine. They're good now, but I think we can even make them better. This morning I had a request from somebody who wanted to put climbing rocks and boulders in parks like they have out at Stapleton. And we get requests for a senior playground we've had over the years. There's just a lot of options we could consider if funding weren't an issue. And if we really had a brain trust to sit down and say, okay, now you're going to use this amount of money to acquire new land, you got a little bit left, and over the next 13 years, you're going to get over $700,000 a year. How can the city best use that money and partner with us? And then we can partner with the Arapahoe County Open Space for matching grants too, to make some improvements. So I think the potential is there.
Bruce?
oh, go ahead, we're gonna.
I was going to say, time's running short, but I wanted to get to one more point. But go ahead, Bruce.
Two reasonably quick questions. Talk a little bit, if you would, do you guys have ideas, plans, creative thoughts regarding, say, Progress Park and maybe to a lesser extent Promise Park on the north side of the town of Littleton Boulevard?
Promise Park, we just want to keep the grass green there because it's worn out. We have no immediate plans for that.
Okay.
I think it serves a need. Progress Park is one of those parks that I think we could upgrade. There's no real playground down there.
Right.
And the shelter was built before I came to work for South Suburban, and that was 45 years ago. So it could be improved.
Yeah, it seems like that would be, for that part of the community, there'd be some real upside if there were some, and we don't generally talk that much about it relative to Hudson or Cornerstone or whatnot. The other thing I was going to ask you, and I know you guys spend a lot of time working this, but just looking at the magnitude of the maintenance expenses you've got on here and the admin kind of charges, talk a little bit about how you guys approach that from the standpoint of keeping the cost structure down to get the most mileage, most bang for the buck in terms of, your processes or how you approach things, how your decision-making process works on what should be maintained how and so forth and so on.
Yeah, that's not an easy question to answer, but I'll try to be brief. One, our board is very fiscal conservative. We have to answer to that board when we take a budget to them. They are very aware of expenses and rising expenses. We have a management plan on the parks, and we define parks by 3 different categories. And we don't call them A, B, or C, but that's what they are. The more frequently used, higher maintenance, like Stearns Park, get more attention. Next level down, a little bit less, and then a third level, depending on the use of the park and how it is. And through all the parks in the system, we have a management plan that defines that. We have spent a lot of money on irrigation systems because of the big cost. We're spending $1.2 million this year on irrigation if we have a normal year. If we have a hot year like some people are forecasting, that's going to go up. So we've invested in new irrigation systems, computerized control and all of that. Denver Water tells us we're one of the most efficient ones around in terms of the amount of inches we put on grass a year. I don't remember exactly, but I think it's like 24 inches a year is the standard. We're like at 19 or something. So we manage as best we can. We have, in my mind, limited full-time people. We take advantage of the part-time staff who work seasonal. Grass only grows, from March till October. And that's where we have to do more mowing and more maintenance. And if you saw in that slideshow, we have just over 200 full-time people in the district. We have about 1,400 part-time people. So that shows how we try to manage to be efficient with our labor force.
Thanks.
Bill?
And 2 items.
Wait just a minute. David, when you give an answer, we're being broadcast. The further away you get from that microphone, the less people can hear you. And so could you stay a little closer to the microphone?
I'm sorry. I forgot about the televised audience here. We're not used to that at South Spring.
And people can't hear you when you get that far back.
The calls are coming in.
What did he say? Thanks, Jim.
2 items. The first one is, as I believe most of the board, as well as you are aware, we had our Open Space and Parks Task Force, and John Ostermiller, your board member, participated in that. In that report and set of recommendations, it does include taking a look at maintenance and development of existing parks as being items that were there. And maybe when you meet with the city manager and Public Works Director, you can include the projects that you would see, because at least from my perspective, I think South Suburban's closer to what could or should be done in that. And I think my personal thought would be we're probably in a position to use the money, but we also have to be stewards, and it's not just handing you a bag and on that side. And then so that the other council members are aware, tomorrow night is at the South Suburban Park and Rec District Board meeting. Part of that is their annual volunteer recognition, and it's a pretty sweet thing to see the folks and the number of hours that folks put into on a volunteer basis on part of our parks, our facilities, and so some of the recognition will be for those folks that are here at the Littleton facilities, and will be recognized tomorrow.
Good. Maybe 2 more things real quick to wrap it up. And Littleton is part of the Highline Canal Working Group, which is kind of modeled after the South Platte Working Group. And the group is applying for a Rivers Corridor grant with Great Outdoors Colorado. The presentations were yesterday up to the Jefferson County Administrative Building, and Susan Beckman and Shannon Carter made the presentation. They've had requests for $90 million, and they have $31 million to give out. It's going to be interesting to see how they divide that up, whether they'll try to do 2 or 3 big projects and fund them entirely, or whether they'll give everybody a little bit. But Littleton has 2 projects that are part of that Highline Canal group, and that's the Olson property and the Rice property. And so hopefully we get some funding there and some assistance. The other thing I wanted to mention, I think you all have been invited on April 19th to Hudson Gardens at 9 o'clock by the Arapahoe County Commissioners for a reconvening of the South Platte Working Group. And to me, this is one of the most exciting and potential projects we have in the county. The South Platte River, I've long felt, is the most natural resource we have in the county, and we ought to really reinvest in the South Platte River and turn it into more of an amenity than it is. The South Platte Working Group was a start, but really it's just touched the tip of the iceberg. We were planning to extend the East Side Trail on the South Platte River from Big Dry Creek, where we ended up last fall. We had the dedication down to Oxford, where the Inglewood Golf Course is. And we're prepared to go after GOCO money and Arapahoe County open space money. And Urban Drainage called a meeting, and Susan Beckman happens to be the chair of the Urban Drainage. And they've had a proposal from one of the Wright Water engineers to do some major enhancements on the river corridor itself. Right below Union, there's some kayak courses, and they think that can be made into, I won't say world-class, but a much more attractive kayak facility. And the plan that they shared, and this is just a concept, was to open up the river to more people use. Sand beaches where people can come down to the river. Right now, the trails are up above, but people love the water. And if we can make them safe and open them up and have more amenities along the river, and I hope you'll attend that meeting, and I think the potential there. I heard the comment that Littleton has a Santa Fe corridor plan, and I've heard that now you're thinking the South Platte River corridor plan, and I think that's so exciting to look what we can do at the river from South Platte Park all the way down and enhance the economic development and the recreation opportunities along that river. We've started, but we've got a long way to go.
Jim?
David, I do a lot of walking along the river, and across from the water treatment plant for Inglewood, there's a small sandbar right close to those boat chutes you're talking about that Urban Drainage wants to look at. And there's always people out there playing on the sandbar with their kids, and their kids can wade in relatively shallow water that's not moving, probably a little warmer because it's not moving and the sun has warmed it up some. So I agree with you, a sand beach would be a really nice amenity to have along this. And the second comment I'd like to make may be more geared toward Joanne than anybody else, but Dr. Cog has a lot of statistics on aging of the community, and they can give you the projected growth of what the aging community is going to look like for Arapahoe County. And you can extrapolate from that what it would be for South Suburban. So after the meeting, if you want to, I can give you the phone number to contact somebody there to get all those statistics if you'd like to look at it. It's going to change the programming of what South Suburban is going to be doing in the future.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you mentioning that. Our senior coordinator, Linda Always, made me a copy of that report. So
Yes, because she's on the advisory committee, right?
And I agree with you. People that were 60, 40 years ago did different things that people 60-year-olds today won't do. So you're right.
Well, Dave, thank you very much, and on behalf of the council, we are all going to be in attendance Thursday.
Good.
Appreciate your presentation, and did you have any other comments?
No, I'll be glad to answer any other questions, and we thank you for your time and your attention.
Ask Kay. Kay, if you have anything you'd like to add, the chairman, and
I don't, but I come up to the microphone. Please.
yeah, you can. There. We do have.
One is I'd like to thank everyone for allowing us to have this opportunity. And I just want to add on for Bruce, you were talking about the maintenance costs of the parks. And Dave, you can add or correct me. It was about 3 or 4 years ago, Harold Neal was looking at, we needed additional maintenance for some parks and fields that had soccer. So at that time, I think we added 3 part-time positions, and we increased the water, we increased the fertilization, and we increased the field preparation to make it more safe. Cornerstone was one, Bowles Grove was one. Where was the third one?
I think those were the two.
Well, the two, and so we looked at it from a need of use, and we also looked at it from a need of safety. because Harold Neal had brought pictures and was showing that in front of the gold mouse and things like that, we really needed to sort of step up. And so, as Dave was saying, if our irrigation guy, he can tell you how many inches, like it could be 15 inches at Katrina, it could be 18 inches. So it's not just a blanket amount. So when it's that number is there per acre, that's just not universal. And so when we have a high usage for soccer, we look at what those needs are and the impact, because otherwise any field could be taken down to dirt without really adding water or fertilizer or better maintenance. So anyway, we thank you guys for everything, and I thank the board for coming. And it's sort of a magical time for South Suburban and the city of Littleton, because we've always had such a good relationship. And I think that's, we come halfway all the time. And I used to always think that South Suburban is a feeder for Littleton, and Littleton's a feeder for South Suburban. So if you go back and you see how many people have been jointly together, it's really a tribute to how our communities and our organizations work. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much.
Hey, Dave, who do I call for specific questions that I have on this? On the financials? Steve.
You can call me, but if you want a correct answer, Steve Shipley, our finance director.
Cool. What number would that be?
Steve?
483-7052. 483-7052. 303? Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Good to see all of you. Okay, council, our next budget item, agenda item is the Humane Society of South Platte Valley. We wanted to give a bit of an update and kind of share some additional information with council before our study session with Inglewood on April 27th, I think. 23rd. And Inglewood City Council has already had a study session where they have gotten the information you're going to get tonight. It's a lot of information, but we're giving it to you early, as opposed to an hour before the meeting. So you'll have time to read over it. So we don't expect certainly you to read this tonight and ask questions on it, but Michael is going to give kind of an overview, a synopsis of where we are, and then this information here will detail that out, and then everybody will be at the same place at the study session. So, Michael?
Thank you, Mayor. So the first document that I have is actually the document that the Humane Society is going to pass out at the joint study session. It's the one from Nick Fisher dated April 3rd, and he was gracious enough to get it completed in order to meet the timeline of this study session so that you can have that. So read through that at your convenience. And then really what you have is somewhat of a narrative process ending with our actual contract for services in there. And so there's some stats relative to the number of animals through 2011 and I believe 2010. There's some different budget numbers in there, and a little bit of information on the evolution of it, both in Nick's memo and the one titled 2012 Proposed Budget Narrative. But essentially, there are, what has happened, and you probably all know this, but there was an original request of $100,000 for capital startup, and then some discussion around the amount of the annual payment that was going to come from primarily Littleton and Inglewood. That number, the original request was $75,000, and that went down to $50,000 for each municipality. It's not playing out from a cash flow standpoint as far as I can see, because in late 2010, the Humane Society came forward and said, can we have an advance of $25,000 on the 2011 payment? And they were given that, and then they came in the end of 2011 and asked if we could have, if the Humane Society could receive a $25,000 advance on the 2012 payment. And now, in what has happened, what also happened at the end of 2011 was a request from the Humane Society to both Englewood and Littleton for an additional $41,000 a year. So the annual payment from each municipality would be a total of $91,000. Now, those statements and those numbers I just gave you are in a vacuum, because we have a contract for service, and if that's what it costs for the service, then that's probably the appropriate amount. The challenge has been that we, Englewood and Littleton, have been trying to work with the Humane Society to ensure that the budget and the fiscal plan that the Humane Society is sustainable, and it's not $91,000 in 2012 and then some larger number in 2013 and 2014. So one of the things you need to be keeping in the back of your head is what's a fair number? How do we equitably distribute the government payments to the Humane Society? One of the sheets in here breaks down what the payments are from Englewood, Sheridan, Parker, I think Lone Tree, us, that type of thing. So Columbine, that's in there, and they're relatively small after Englewood and Littleton. So the mayor had asked and has participated with me in some of the meetings. We've been trying to determine what other models are out there. What's the best model? For example, the City of Centennial contracts with Pikes Peak to do enforcement, the animal control. Then they contract with Tenaker to handle the sheltering services. There's a 5-day requirement for strays, and so that goes up to Tenaker, which has a facility, I believe, north of here. And then Tenaker works with Denver Dumb Friends League for actual adoption of some of those. So that's a model. We in Englewood have our own, and actually the county, Arapahoe County just signed up for $30,000, by the way, for the same service using the Humane Society for both the sheltering services, that 5-day, as well as the adoption services. So, and when we met with the Pikes Peak folks, there is no one magic. It was clear there is not one magic formula that works for any different municipality. I think the intent of what both we, Littleton and Englewood, want to accomplish at this joint study session around this issue is, what is an appropriate cost? Do they have, as I said, a budget that is sustainable? Are their revenues appropriate? And are the government agencies each paying a fair pro rata share? And the answer may be yes to all of that, but it's an opportunity for you all to get in front of them and ask those questions jointly with the Englewood City Council. One of the thoughts that I want you to be thinking about between now and then is it worthwhile to have some larger IGA that the municipalities put together and we contract for animal control? So we have an animal control officer. Arapahoe County has an animal control officer. Englewood has an animal control officer. Would it make more sense to put some kind of IGA together, do some mass contract for that kind of thing? Or should, an IGA where one agency takes it? Just thinking a little bit more regionally about how we might approach this, and then jointly work with the Humane Society to keep our government costs as reasonable as possible. There definitely, from what we've heard and gleaned, there's a benefit to our communities of having the Humane Society located here. If your dog gets lost and you have to go pick them up, you don't have to drive a long distance to go get them. It's right here. Adoptions are here from the stray animals that come in our community. So there is community value for it. And so how do we assist them in making it as sustainable and healthy as possible without us being the prime funder? I was just doing some mad math, and it looks like between the government agencies right now, based upon the 2012 budget, government is funding the Humane Society about 30%. Now, I can't tell you that their revenue projections are accurate and that number is real, but just based upon the budget that they've provided for us, that's what it is. And so again, as the mayor said, Englewood has had a similar conversation to this, and we just want you guys to have all that same information as we walk into that meeting. So read it, think about what questions you might have. We certainly, in the meetings we have had with Englewood manager and mayor, the goal and desire is to have the Humane Society be successful, and how do we work with them and not continually write a bigger check every year, which is at least what the picture looks like as you look at the 75,000, 50 plus in advance, 91 type of thing. So how do we resolve that?
Jim?
So.
In your discussions with the Pikes Peak group, do they cover their expenses with the services they're providing, or do they have government subsidies as well to keep them in the black?
I wouldn't use the word subsidies. They have a contractual agreement with, for example, the city of Sheridan for providing that service, and then they do make additional revenue from some of the other services that they provide. They operate in almost all the different models, because they have actually in Colorado Springs, they have a building, an adoption facility, so they operate in different formulas. But I would, if they were here, I believe that they would say that they have that straight contract from Sheridan, which covers the core costs, and then through the other services they make additional revenues on top of that.
And a contract with, don't they also do Centennial?
That's what
Yes.
I said Centennial, yes, that is,
Yeah.
at least I
You
meant
said
to say
Sheridan, you
Centennial.
meant
Oh, sure, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah,
At least
and
I'm
they-
not saying Summit County, you know?
These little towns right here
They
confuse
just
you.
flow around.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Phil?
Yes, and I'm just looking at the statistics pages, Michael, and a couple things just jump out, and maybe it's explained in all the text, but I didn't find it very quickly. Two pieces. One is what is non-agency? Because it seems to be, in some instances, roughly about 2/3 of the volume that the agency is dealing with.
And this will be somewhat of an educated guess, that it is drop-offs, it is other animals that come in, a dead animal that you pick up and bring into the facility. It's an animal that is brought in by someone other than the government listed above.
One of their contract agencies.
And I know at least at some of the initial levels in this, and, talking about a sustainable approach would be to have more agencies involved. And, that indeed they've had the aspect of overhead or infrastructure that's required, and what is the capacity or not to bring on other agencies? And so that's a question that I'd ask, and so you can.
One of the things that we've learned, particularly talking to Pikes Peak, is that the model that Humane Society of South Platte Valley uses is not a terribly successful model around the country. It is in some terms, it's kind of an old-fashioned model where there was a different level of service expected. Denver Dump Friends League will not do any city contracts anymore. They want nothing to do with it. And primarily, the reason for that is, and they have none, all of their adoptions are done either with a relationship with a Tenaker where something like that happens, or drop-offs. But the reason for that is because it's not, you do more work than you get paid for. So one of the things Nick has been trying to do is get additional cities in, but every time you get an additional city, you're going to get additional animals too, and it is the cost of caring for those animals that is expensive. So when we had done some, after talking to Pikes Peak, it seemed that it might be a viable alternative for us to look at doing some sort of an IGA with not only the cities that are currently contracting, but then it may make it more attractive for some of the other cities who aren't contracting to do something, just to lock it in. Because one of the things that kept showing up in the failed agreements with both Centennial and Arapahoe County was that there wasn't, that the society could not commit to a ongoing fee structure. They couldn't give them a 5-year rate and those types of things. So I've actually been making some query phone calls to the mayors in the other municipalities and getting incredibly positive response as to if they would be interested at some point, if the councils, the Inglewood and Littleton determine that that may be a way we want to explore, that they would be very happy to sit at the table, because I think everybody understands the value of having that facility because, for example, Centennial is, what they don't like about what they're doing is that they can't provide that additional service for their citizens. And right now, their citizens have to drive pretty far to go pick up their animals, and they don't like that. They complain about that. So we do have a benefit there, but we also have to watch what we're spending, and I think we need to get some control of that, and maybe something like a different relationship may do that. So that's going to be on the table, Phil, and that would, I think, make it more friendly for other cities to look at that and say, oh, an IGA, I might be able to work with that.
Two of the questions that Pikes Peak folks hypothetically put on the table was, did we have the population density and did we have an animal density that warranted a humane society? And it was just a pure inquiry, because they said that's one of the things. You've got the new Jefferson County facility. Obviously, the Denver Dumb Friends League has been around for ever in a day, and the one in Colorado Springs. But they did a lot of whatever analysis, upfront work, to determine that the answer to there was the human density, which caused enough of the animal density to warrant having this. And so they said that's a good question to be asking.
Jim?
I think Castle Rock has a separate animal control division. They may be like an independent, like we in Inglewood are.
Yeah, I think they talked about Castle Rock,
Yeah.
but since I'm getting Sheridan
I think Castle Rock has a buddy center.
Douglas, is it part of?
Isn't it?
Douglas?
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah. But yeah, that's.
Through Douglas County.
It's the buddy
But
center,
that-
I think.
But that may be another potential partner too that we might look at.
Yeah, they've always been, because of their relationship with the Denver Dumb Friends League and the Buddy Shelter, they've always had kind of a hybrid thing going, but it's definitely worth looking into, particularly with their growth down there. Okay. Any other questions on that? I would say, as you read this material, if you have any additional questions, go ahead and shoot them off to Michael. If he or I could answer them, we will. If not, save them for the study session. Okay. Bruce?
A question I'm going to have, but I don't think I want to see the answer tonight. On the revenue side for this, our fee structure for dogs running at large, et cetera, that we would issue a summons to somebody for picking up their dog, and it would come back through the court system, or the cost that they might be.
Ransom.
The fee, the ransom that's paid when they pick up their dog, and all those kinds of things, and see where that fits in terms of the $200 per animal, or the actual cost of maybe over $313 per animal that the shelter believes it costs them to handle that dog.
Okay, absolutely.
I don't know where that'll fit in the discussion, but it's certainly part of it.
Okay, I'll see what we can get on our end of it.
But that is a huge component of how this financial thing works, and that is an excellent question that needs to be answered, because one of the reasons why the model that Centennial is using is so less expensive is that the agency collects the fee, the ransom fee. So the city, there's a lot of fees involved, so we have a ransom, but the city pays for like $80 per dog, but then the citizen pay, and they have staff. In fact, they've got, I think, some FTE, half an FTE or something that helps get that stuff moved through, and the agency, to help keep that rate down, keeps that fee. But there's a different.
And just one last, and you'll see this in Nick's memo, there will be a request at the end of that study session for the additional $41,000. I think his ending paragraph in his memo to you is, as soon as possible, they would like that additional 41 from each municipality. So be thinking about that, and I don't see a reason to say no as long as your questions about the long-term viability of the Humane Society are answered and you're comfortable that that 91 next year is not going to grow to X, Y, and Z over the multiple years. So, but be prepared for that question. Thank you.
Anything else on that? Okay. Do you want to get into economic development, or you want to take a quick break?
Good.
Let's do it. Okay. Last study session we had, Chris gave a presentation on the economic gardening program, because one of the things that we had indicated in our goals and objectives is economic development. How that looks, what that is, we don't know, but that's one of the things that we have put on our list. And so after Chris's presentation, we moved to additional people who we had guests waiting, and we were going to move that conversation over to another, this study session. And as I got to thinking about it, it occurred to me that this is really a very, very, very big issue. And one of the things that, having been on council now and going into my 5th year, we've really never had a conversation about economic development, that group that got bigger than economic gardening discussion. And I don't feel as though I have enough information about what it is, what it could be for Littleton, what Littleton needs or doesn't need, or should do or shouldn't do, what's going on out there, what's happening with the changing world, the way things are, the economy changes and relationships change and leaders change. And so I thought that it might behoove us to expand our discussion of economic development over a little longer period of time. It doesn't need to be something we make a quick decision about. And in doing so, I put down some thoughts regarding some things that we might be able to discuss at study sessions over the next 6 months. Some of this comes from the opportunity that I've had as mayor to go to meetings around the region, including the metro mayors, and listen to some discussions from other communities on economic development, what works, what doesn't, and also on the regional level in terms of regional economic development and how that works for everyone, and how everyone the levels at which people need to participate. So that kind of is what grew out of what the 6-month program grew out of. And then I had felt as though we've had great success when we have some ad hoc groups working on special projects. The Open Space Task Force is an example of that. And so, because for so many years there's been, unfavorable, or at least I think an undeserved image of whether Littleton wants to have any new development, what they want to have, what this, that, and the other thing. You talk to a developer here and they'll say this one will say that, a builder says this. We're hearing a whole bunch of different things. So what if we put together a group of folks who were really experts in economic development, who did build, who worked with banks on what monies are available and how you lend and how you get it, and how do you look at cities when, what are your criteria when you're looking to build a new development? What do you look at? Why does this city get it and that city doesn't? And to put together the people who do that and ask them to talk together for a number of months and have some information we would like for them to bring back, give them minimal amount of direction with an expectation that they will be part of this learning that we'll have, and have them work on putting all their experience and knowledge together and bring back some recommendations, some suggestions, some ideas, whatever would come from that. And then that would be one of the study sessions we would do. Then to, at the conclusion of this, have something like a half-day workshop or retreat where we'd spend, maybe a half a day Saturday or something like that, 9 to noon, 9 to 1, and just digest everything we'd heard, take an opportunity to discuss what we wanted to do, and from that would grow, I would hope, what our next steps were and what we wanted to direct staff to do or not do. And I want to open this up to discussion. I sent you guys asked Marlene to send the information I put together on this, and so I hope you have all had a chance to read it. And basically, it's just an opportunity, I think, for us to broaden our scope of knowledge, cast a wider net in terms of what it is that's out there. It is not making a decision. It's not saying we're going to, do one thing or the other, but I frankly just did not feel like I had enough information to be able to say one way or the other. I think economic gardening is great. I love it. I participate in it. It's helped my business. I've seen it help Littleton. I have no problem with economic gardening, but I don't feel comfortable saying that's all we should do. So this is basically a conversation on that. I did want to point out, just for the sake of clarification, I saw that Peggy had requested some information on Glendale. I've included Glendale in this, not because I think Littleton should be Glendale. By no stretch of the imagination do I believe that should be happening. Glendale is an incredibly unique city, and Glendale has done things that many cities would never do. But also things that other cities are afraid to do. And I have heard their story, and I have found it to be very inspiring. And it is inspiring in the sense that they were very open to different ideas, very open to ways of doing things differently. They were incredibly collaborative in what they did, and they worked very closely with their businesses and their residents, with their neighboring cities, and they put together some interesting financing and made some things happen, and they've got some things that may not happen, or they may look a little different when it's all done and said and done, but I think it would help us to kind of stretch our thinking to see what other cities are doing and having success with. So that's why I've included Glendale in there. And open that up for questions, comments, suggestions. Jim?
I just make a comment. I think that Chris and his department has just done a really wonderful job for the city of Littleton. I've been thinking at some point for a few months now about we may need to take a slightly different step of doing, in addition to what Chris does as an information provider as much as anything, to get into a role of a recruiter of some sort. And that just kind of solidified itself when we did the tour the other day, in that you've got these small parcels of land that are prime for a small type of development. And I heard what Jeff Howell said when he was here, that the chamber promotes Littleton for its economic recruitment growth, but how much of that is really, I think the chamber gears itself more to larger parcels of land. more to the Insers and to the Marathons than they do to those half-acre, one-acre sites along Mineral Avenue, or that's in the South Park business area there. And so I was thinking along the lines of maybe an economic development corporation, but your idea of the economic development think tank would take that place, I think. And the economic development corporations that I'm familiar with around the metro area have some sort of funding source, which I've never really came to a conclusion about how that would happen in Littleton. But I would like to see the things that Chris does and his department does expanded into a slightly different role that would go in parallel with the information that Chris is able to provide. So, random thoughts.
Thank you. Phil?
Yes, two items. One is, as I've become aware in the last several months, as the Chamber's BRE Ambassador Program has been going, is that Chris and his staff are indeed in contact with a vast majority of the businesses that are here in Littleton every year. That information about why they're here, what brought them here to begin with, and that profile is a tremendous amount of knowledge, or at least data, that hasn't been brought forth to the council. I don't know whether it's shared with the staff. I would say only on a limited basis is the chamber even aware of that. Hence the chamber's effort around the BRE ambassadors. And I would like to encourage us to say, let's have that captured and have it in a digestible form, and I wouldn't want to wait 6 months to get it. And then secondly, on the heels of Chris's presentation and where he indicated the opportunity for Littleton is the part that I would say I wouldn't want to wait to initiate that effort either. One is he indicated that we do have Burton-like capabilities. For folks, that's the ability to take the demographics and the population and the opportunities that could exist for a retailer and be in a position to match that against what kind of retail opportunities there can be, and be in a position to, and I'd like to see a recommendation that actually comes from Chris or staff that says, how can we work with property owners and property managers to have some of that leveraged? Because if we follow Chris's presentation, where our opportunity is in the near term isn't necessarily on manufacturing or primary facilities, but in building retail. And I would like us to grab a hold of that as the economy is turning, that opportunity is there. And again, I don't want to wait, and at least my thought would be not to wait 6 months to move that forward. Just as last year we were able to work with some of the center owners or property managers on that, and we've had some positive impacts from an awareness of the capabilities that the city has. This talks about how rich and fertile is our the opportunities, the business opportunities to be here with a business. So it's not just saying, hey, be in Littleton for that. Am I summarizing that reasonably, Chris? Okay, and I would say that's a place I wouldn't want to say, hand it off to some folks. And then third item, which is kind of a footnote, Glendale's actually presenting to the Economic Development Group of the Chamber on Friday this week.
Bruce, well, Stallman and then Backman.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea. To sort of play, I guess, a little bit with some of the marketing stuff we did over the past couple of years, or at least tried to put a stake in the ground on. I think we all collectively have an idea of what to us, or I have an idea of what to me economic development means. We all bring that to the table, but what I think we learn repeatedly as we collectively don't know what we don't know. What we're trying to do with something like this, in my opinion, is sort of what we did with the Open Space Task Force, which is, you know, we all have a view as to what the parcels are, but then when a group sits down and looks at them specifically, they're able to distill a lot of information down into something where it's digestible and you can maybe make informed decisions. To me, this level of collaboration puts us miles ahead of you know, where we would be without it. I think we've collectively been a very collaborative community in a variety of formats, but I think we get so much more traction when we're collaborative with people and partnering with people who have different skill sets and can bring those to the table to everybody's mutual advantage. I guess the one thing I would say is if we, you know, the rubber will meet the road, we've got to make sure we understand, you know, what skill sets we want in this group. And then ultimately, if we're going to invite people to participate, there's got to be a genuine willingness to, I think, consider and act upon some of the recommendations. Because if we're just going to listen to what these guys, you know, or people say and then thank them for their time and give them a certificate, that's just not going to work. I mean, if they bring some stuff to the table, we've got to be willing to act on things that are potentially outside of the box. And I guess I would say that's a mindset we ought to seriously have going into this if we decide to move forward.
Bruce?
First of all, I want to say thank you for putting this together and doing the research. This is really, I think, an important first step for the city's future strategic planning. And I think economic development is a key part of that. I think there's two issues. There's the shorter range issue that Phil brings up, where he expresses the sense of urgency, and I agree with that there are some urgencies to some of these issues, and they're urgent because of the changing economic times that we want to make sure we don't get behind the wave. We want to be ahead of the wave. But I think from a long-range challenge, this ad hoc committee is a great way to go. And I think ad hoc committees, I don't know what the history of them has been in the city, but ad hoc committees are a great way to deal with specific issues that have a starting and an ending, and you know, you can put a definite period at the end of their involvement. They don't last forever, and that then requires them to know what their outcome is. So I would suggest that we do need to decide what the outcome should be of that committee, so that they understand from the beginning that that's what they're there to do. But then I want to also caution us that once that committee's formed, they're going to see different ways they need to maneuver to the right or left in order to accomplish it. So we don't want to be so narrowly defining to them that we limit their ability to give us back what it is we really want, which is whatever that outcome is.
Great, thank you. Jerry?
Yeah, is what we received this evening the same thing as that we received in email?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Great, thanks. Thanks for putting that together. I think economic development is what city council should be working on. And that's not to say that the number of chickens and whether or not we tax or do not tax plastic bags is not important. I think economic development is definitely what we should be working on. And I think what you've put together here is a great outline. I think we need to maybe tweak it a bit, but I think this is the way we should be going, and we should be very involved to some degree. So thank you for doing this.
You bet, thank you. Peggy?
Yeah, I thank you too, Deb. But I think we need to be asking Chris what he thinks we need to be moving forward. I mean, that's part of what I think we need. I have no idea what Chris thinks might be helpful to move us forward. I also know that a lot of people want to move forward, but businesses are not necessarily wanting to come and move forward. On the other hand, some are. We've got projects in Littleton. So, you know, I'm not sure what we need to be doing. I myself would prefer not to have a think tank. I would much prefer for council to have rigorous series of meetings at which we engage the people that might be on the think tank, but not a think tank, so that we're we're moving along together, having the input, hearing things that maybe will help staff with some of the code issues, some of the problems developers are facing, or whatever, that we can be making progress moving along. So I would rather have the whole council engaged. I remember reading however many the BAC reports, that I read all of them that were ever done, and they would get to a conclusion, and then nothing got done in their conclusion because it wasn't really in council's control, I think, most of the time to do something that they saw as a possibility. It's out there in the larger world. So I'd like just to have more rigor with council, engaged with the kinds of people that we're talking about, to go at this together really big time. And again, with input from our business industry affairs. Because, I mean, we had the wonderful explanation of why properties haven't been developed. And it's not totally in anybody's control, but trying to get some churn going is important, it seems to me, and to make sure that we get the roadblocks out of the way without giving up things that we think are really important to Littleton. So I think that's mainly my stuff.
Jerry?
Peggy, you're absolutely right. Whatever we put together, whatever it is, let's do it. I mean, we've done corridor studies, we've done comp plans, and essentially we don't follow these things, or we never put them to work or follow them as the plan calls out. And I think you alluded to that as well. I think if we were to go the route that this is suggesting, I do think that we need to give it the attention that we're expecting it, the end result to be, and that we should implement it, not just have a nice study and, as you said, a certificate and thank you very much, have a good day. I do like the idea of bringing in, bringing in some, I don't know if you, big developers, not just the small-time guys who, maybe run a small mom and pop shop. I'm thinking of somebody who is national, a national organization or national representatives who can bring folks in and have them take a look at what we have going on and what are the hurdles and what can we do. Utilizing Chris. I don't think Chris is put to the wayside. No way, no. I think he's a valuable tool for this type of group. What I would not want to see is for the city to lead the group. I want these guys and women to come in and just give us their plan, a plan that is a doable plan, not just some crazy wild plan that is not possible, but something that is very feasible of doing and not being led down the road by the city. Not that the city's bad, folks. I love the city. You guys are good people. But I would like to see a total independent minds coming in, but the mindset of folks who do this across the country in communities like ours and communities not like ours.
Okay. Bruce?
Yeah, I think Jerry's got an excellent point. The advantages, you sort of said as well, we've done the corridor studies and so forth, but the advantage is to bring in at least some element of people who can take a fresh look at some stuff is interesting. The key additionally to that is the context of the thing has to be, I think, set up at some level without, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that they need to have the context that they understand a little bit about Littleton, but they need to be able to think outside the box. I wouldn't want to presuppose what they would come in with, but it's got to be balanced between the benefits, obviously, to the developer won't get done, theoretically, and the benefits to the community, and there's got to be that balancing act and that sharing that goes on from a partnering perspective. So this is, where the context has to be a true partnership at some level. But I think it's excuse me, echoing?
We're hearing you too loud and clear.
Really?
Yeah,
We're
I'm
getting
really
feedback.
I'm turning it off. No, I'm just kidding.
You'd probably pick me up on 3 or 4 others if you did turn this one off.
No, it's popping.
Oh, okay, all right. You want me to start over?
No.
But I thought you had some, I'll just end by saying you had a good point.
Well, and that was also part of the intention was that the people involved in this would not be the people that we're familiar with. I think we already know the opinions of a lot of the folks that we've worked with on certain levels, but there are a lot of people out there who work on a higher level in this stuff, and they work in other cities and other municipalities, they even work in other states, and they just have a broad base of work, a broad base of learnings, a broad base of experience, that to bring that together and watch and have that shared. I met with a person who is a bit of a scout for developers and people who are looking at purchasing property and making things happen on it. And it was interesting to hear her perspective of the work she'd done in Littleton and the work she was doing in Littleton and the work she'd done in other cities. And now, as we were talking, it was just so fascinating to me how there is a whole different way of thinking. And whether it's good, bad, or not, there is just a different way of thinking. And some of the stuff she was talking about was absolutely so right on for Littleton, and so some of the other stuff was so right on for Aurora, but it was just to hear those different kind of thoughts. And I think that when you get all that stuff together, what comes out of it is some really good stuff. And it's, again, you guys, this is not law. This is us saying, we really just want to learn more about what there is out there. Because I frankly, as Bruce said, what we each think economic development is different than what it probably is to Michael or anybody else. But until I know more and until I've heard more from other people, those who've done it right, those who've done it wrong, those who don't do it, I don't know what to tell staff to do. Jim?
And I think that Peggy's concern about a vigorous discussion among council needs to come, but I think it needs to come after we've had a group like this have the opportunity to take the outsider's view, so to speak, and come forth and say, here's some ideas that we've come up with. There's where I think the council needs to have that vigorous discussion. I'm not smart enough to try to invent that wheel, but there are people out there who do invent that wheel all the time, and those are the people we need to tap into.
So if you're okay with moving ahead the way this is kind of laid out, what I would suggest we do is, Phil.
Okay, I will restate what I mentioned before, which is there's some things that can be happening way before this that are consistent with Chris has put before us. One is data digested in some form and knowledge about our businesses. I'm worried, very concerned, that if we follow this approach, okay, with no council liaison and no council contact, that what comes back to us is not rooted in Littleton. I've seen think tanks where folks are put on the side, and what comes back are things that we wouldn't even dream of, okay? It comes back in terms of incentives and tax forgiveness and infrastructure giveaway that is far beyond the means, because there's no one there to kind of say, hey folks, the city is only going to be able to do this, or we're only considering this, or our constraints are something like this. And so, my concern is when Peggy and Jerry and Jim say, there needs to be some involvement and vigorous discussion, my concern is when you hand something off to a think tank. The other part is, I don't have any idea what, or I don't understand yet where this think tank is. And are these volunteers? Is this an RFP that we're going to put out and someone's going to actually facilitate this? What's the cost going to be in something like this? So I have a hard time saying that when, at least as I heard Chris's presentation, there was very much a next step in where some of the opportunity is, which is in development of potential retail, and that we can actually accomplish, and we have the capability to put Burton-like analysis on the demographics that exist in the city, and we can take that information to property owners and property managers and say, okay, here's the types of business that would be attractive in this area, and put together a business case that might actually have them reinvest or redevelop some elements of their property. And it doesn't require some of this. And I don't want to put that aside, because I feel there's an opportunity to take capabilities and resources that we have. I'm not saying it's not great for us to have some of this discussion and for the council to become educated in parallel to that. But what I'd like us to do is say, hey folks, hey Michael, work with Chris, come back with some things. Let's figure out what we can be doing now, very short term, because the capabilities are there and the knowledge base is there about businesses that are here and the demographics that exist in the city. And if we forego some of that because we're going to put ourselves on a 6-month study time frame, I'm going to say, hey, I would not support this in lieu of, hey, let's get some stuff moving and grooving, because we do have some knowledge and we have some capabilities.
And we can do both, so I don't think you have to be concerned about that from the staff side of it.
Okay, because I'm not hearing some of that.
I feel, to me, it's not a either or. I mean, what you're talking about is different, in my opinion. I mean, this is, when I look at what this is proposing, is this is basically saying, okay, going forward, what does our economic development program look like, including staffing and resources and goals and objectives. That's a big picture. That's a, that could be a department or an entity working in the city for the next 20 or 30 years. We don't have something that looks like that now. So do we need something that looks like that? And if we do, then what should it look like? And should this council be the one that makes that happen? What you're talking about is that short term, and is that kind of that low hanging fruit thing. And I don't think that they are exclusive of each other at all. So
Okay, is there an agreement on the part of the city manager and staff that indeed we're going to be pursuing those short-term opportunities?
I would, yes, with the caveat from what you heard during the staff presentation, that short-term is a relative word, because all of these projects take a long time.
I understand implementation, but deployment of our capabilities and our knowledge.
We are not pressing pause on the daily work for what the mayor has presented.
But what I heard from Chris is he's not necessarily taking some of the demographics and some of our capabilities and applying them.
I made some notes from what you said the first time, and we can put that into action.
Jim?
And I think your composition of your think tank, when you talk about maybe coming forth with like pie in the sky that doesn't apply to Littleton, if you get people who either live in Littleton or have done a major project in Littleton as part of the membership of that think tank, they're more grounded into what we are and where we probably could go. When I saw this, I began to try to put together some thoughts about who might be possibilities to fit that membership category. And we've got lots of very sharp people who live in this community and operate outside of this community in the very areas that we want to see something happen. So I think that the think tank composition is really not of a great concern to me. We'll decide among ourselves who that's going to be.
Jerry?
Yeah, again, I don't think this is the final product. I think, I presume you just put this out as a starting point.
Well, what I'd really like to do tonight is to get the April 24th meeting, I'd really like to get you guys to sign off on saying, yeah, let's the 6-month plan, because there's some meetings, for example, the meeting in May is going to take some work to put that together. That's going to be quite a large meeting, particularly if we get Mayor Hancock here and we invite a number of our neighboring mayors, which I think will be an incredibly dynamic meeting. Those are going to take some work. I would like to get on people's schedules for what we need to do to plan this going forward. The think tank, I think, I mean, if you, and we've got some stuff like July and August. August is to be determined meeting. Things are going to come up. Somebody is going to have something else they want to talk about. We don't. And so as we get through maybe April, May, and into June, we'll have some ideas what we want to start putting together for August. So we have some flexibility. The think tank, I think we need to start getting it put together because we would want them, as I've noted in here, to be at our April 24th meeting where you learn what government can and cannot do. Because it makes no sense to send them off to study for what will essentially be 5 months and come back with a bunch of stuff that we can't do that. We can't do that. So we'd like to get that. So there is stuff, sorry, if there is things that we can tweak now and agree on to move forward, great. If there's some things we need to ask staff to do, and maybe we can talk about it at next week's meeting in general business or something. But I'd like to.
Yeah, and that's, when I was saying draft, I think you're absolutely right on the scheduling, trying to get these meetings put together now, because they do take time. And I guess what I was thinking on the involvement, some of the think tank, in the first section that you have there in the think tank, or even the goals and objectives, those are the things that I was talking about tweaking.
Okay.
Not necessarily changing much, but maybe just figuring out, like city council involvement, what, if any, should it be? But I think as far as the rest of the schedule that you put together, I think that is something that is ambitious, and it's going to take time to pull it off.
Okay, so let's see if we.
Like now.
Yeah, is everybody okay with us moving ahead to make the April, May, June, minimum April, May, June meetings, start working on those?
Yes.
Okay.
If we're going to be doing that in May, would like that to be our second.
It'll have to be, May 22nd. We were just discussing location, timing, and trying to invite these folks in the middle of April for a late May. So, and I would ask the council to be flexible in our attempt to
it could
get some of these
flip with
folks.
June,
too. Given I'm sitting here between Jim and Jerry, and they both talked about, different.
We can backhand you each.
But each of them have talked about different considerations for some of the think tank composition. I think that's going to be a pretty heavy discussion, and if you want them present for that first discussion, I would like to see some proposals or of types of folks that would be included in that, and talk about a membership so that we can be careful in that regard, so that we have the appropriate local representation as well as the out-of-the-box national capabilities that my esteemed other council members have talked about, and participate in that. And then how is that group actually going to be facilitated? And whether that's going to have a cost or a fiscal impact.
Well, as I sit here between Phil and Kirsten, I don't think we should overthink the think tank here. So I think, Jim, you're absolutely right. Local involvement by people like maybe Elisa Schomp or somebody like that, or I don't know what. There's folks out there absolutely locally, but I think also involve some nationally if possible. But yeah, I think I'm in agreement on that kind of thing moving forward. But I think if we try to overthink this thing, it's not going to work.
Michael.
I think one of the thoughts I had, and this falls in with Phil's part, I think there needs to be some level of both legal education and cultural education about the Littleton, but certainly we want to make sure that folks, especially if it's somebody who does work in different states, that they fully understand. And this is tied to the April 24th meeting, is what is allowable under Colorado state law. and making sure that they understand it. Whoever the council ultimately brings in knows what the legal parameters are, and then you can narrow that down through that cultural. So one of the things staff can be working on is how we put that component together for you, so you can primarily focus on the two things you brought forward, which is what's the membership, and then the facilitation component that Phil has raised. So we can address that other one, and Kirsten's working on some of that now.
Bruce first and then Peggy.
I want to say again, I think if we say in one or two sentences the outcome that we expect them to come forward to us with in a broad general statement, that will deal with some of the concerns about whether they understand Littleton or they understand our community and those issues, because I think we can incorporate that in that outcome statement.
Can you help me a little bit on the goals and objectives of the think tank that the mayor has proposed here? Are those some examples, or are we getting more specificity, clarification?
Specificity, are they going to give us a report? Do they give us a verbal report? Do they provide alternatives? Do they identify problems? Just a little bit more specificity, but not so tight that it limits them.
Peggy?
Yeah, and I think we do need to work on that part there to figure out what in the world it is we're asking them to do, because I have in my head 5 or 6 different things that actually are different from each other in my own head. But I'm thinking maybe to figure out who would be involved, we might reach out to the groups, like to the banking group, to the developing group, to the whatever, once we get our what we want done, and say, who the devil do you think would really be incisive, not be afraid of us, be creative, be whatever, and be able to also work with our staff, prodding and encouraging and whatever, and work with council. But I think asking somebody else who they think would really be good to serve on this.
And that would be, Michael, I think that would be something staff could do, is to get into those circles, get that, and then bring back to council names and qualifications or something. I know, I don't want to turn it into an interview process or something like that, because these guys are 5-page resumes, most of them, but
Probably
it
gonna
would
be
at
more of
least
a
give us
recruitment process.
Jim?
Well, you're looking at 14 days.
Yeah.
I mean, if this is going to move forward, it's got to move forward extremely fast.
And I was just going to suggest, because yes, Mayor, we could do the outreach component. I don't know how prepared the council is tonight to Councilman Beckman's comment of really identifying what the goals and objectives of the think tank are. I guess I would say in terms of just the overall flexibility, because Jim, I had the same thought and concern, is it's really either tonight or you're pushing it another.
Push it off a month.
Push it off another month. And it doesn't necessarily have to follow the timeline of the council's education and its piece. Maybe there's a month or two separation in there, but to the extent that you guys can try to brainstorm tonight and provide us some language and specific goals, we could move forward as soon as you guys gain consensus on that.
Yeah, I think, I have to say, when I was kind of working on this, the one thing I kept wanting to do was keep it simple, not get super complicated, not layer it all up with stuff. I think the think tank, frankly, I don't even really want to know who's on it. I only say that because I think if we get a diverse group of people from banking, from development, residential, commercial, realtors, business people of all different sizes, they will provide us with what we need. If we start nitpicking in it too much, then it starts to turn into a group that is representing each of our individual interests again, and we're going to get out of it what we put into it, which is exactly what we don't want. We want fresh, different, like I said, when I talked to this person, I did not know her. And I have since mentioned the think tank to her, and she was incredibly excited if it was something that we ended up going with that she would serve on. And her experience is just so broad. I don't even know how you would look for someone like that. And I think we can make some calls to some of our bankers. We know plenty of people who are looking at property, different companies, different things, and put together a group of, it doesn't have to be a huge group. I said no, max of 11. It could be a group of 7. The bigger the group, the more complicated it can get anyway. Jim?
Well, once you get through with what the goals and objectives of the think tank are, I would be prepared to give you some names I've thought of bankers in real estate and economic development people that I don't know them. I know of them. Some of them I know have met various times throughout the years. But if they walk through the front door, I probably wouldn't recognize most of them without expecting them to come through the
I
door.
think that would be great. I think that's great.
Deb,
sorry.
since a couple of you had the experience on the task force with a facilitator to help with the consensus process, do you think that might be useful too for them? Because I'm assuming we're going to have some pretty powerful thinkers who are pretty used to having some significant individual influence. Not that they would be bad, but if they have to work by consensus, that's
Well, I think that would be, I would go with that, a facilitator that would keep them, at least that would keep them on point, on task. The one thing that Will did for us continuously is bring us back to council goals and objectives, so that you don't get too far astray. And a facilitator would be I don't know if Will would venture into this or not. He, of course, is an excellent facilitator. We've used him on a lot of things, but that would be a budget issue on a facilitator. But if that would give council a comfort level to not having a liaison and not having a relationship with council during the think tanking, then that may be a good option. Okay. So why don't we do this? Why don't we, if you guys want to spend some time, because I know you haven't had a lot of time to digest all of this, look over the goals and objectives and, see some things you'd like to add. I think we should put this on general business for Tuesday, and then we can walk through that, get that mulched down to the marching orders. Meanwhile, Michael, if you could work on finding a facilitator, getting us back, what that would look like. And if council members have people in their mind who might be good, like Jim has got some ideas, shoot those names off to Michael to vet them out, call them, see if there's an interest, see if they have time, see if they have another recommendation. The person I spoke to, I asked her, I said, do you have other people who you think might also serve well in this, who do not do what you do? I don't want a whole bunch of the same people. And she said, yes. So I think we can, string through that pretty well. So then we'll bring this back Tuesday. Goals and objectives, think tank.
If I may, if you do have specific goals and objectives that you would like to get into the packet, just go ahead and email those to me, and we can just do a cumulative ongoing list of everything that comes in, and then we'll just give you the document, and that might help speed up that conversation a little bit.
You need it by noon Thursday at least.
Noon Thursday.
Earlier than that, because I'm on the interview panel. I really need it by Wednesday.
Couldn't we just?
That's tomorrow. Never mind.
Couldn't we email it out to people Monday?
But it's true.
That's a mighty
what I'm gonna
fast
say, it's not gonna
turnaround
happen.
time.
Yeah,
for
no,
some
that's
of
why I
us,
just,
so-
never
so-
mind. I didn't,
There'll be too many grammatical errors in it, Peggy, man, we can't do it. You'll kill us.
Yeah.
if you want to go ahead and email it to me, then what I can do is email that cumulative list out to all of you on Monday, and we'll bring a hard copy on Tuesday.
Okay, yeah. Email it to Michael by Monday. And Michael, by Monday morning, so we have it by Monday by Monday noonish,
Yep,
because I'd like to have
it's
at
a
least.
quick turnaround, so.
Yeah, at
That's-
least 24 hours before.
Okay, Monday by noon, and I'll cut and paste it and turn it right around.
You or Marlene.
Yes. The collective we of staff.
Anything else on this, guys?
Good job, man.
Thanks.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much. And if there's nothing else, Michael would like to know if we would like to talk about the sewer.
Of course, we just had dinner.
Doesn't
We just
everybody?
gotta-
Come on, jeez.
Yes,
Okay.
nutrient update.
Yes,
Oh,
please.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Nutrient
All right.
information
Yes.
update.
Phrasing makes all the difference.
Yeah,
So
phrasing makes all the difference.
That was very good.
So the two documents I have, we have previously passed out, but I have them in case anyone wants it. It's the summary of the hearing on nutrient regulations, Littleton Inglewood wastewater treatment plant that the treatment plant staff did, along with our attorneys, and then the other is the actual permit limits on each of those. And I think Councilman Stallman had asked for this because, as you all know, on April 23rd, the other thing besides dogs, cats, and other reptiles that we'll be talking about will be the treatment plant in our joint study session with Inglewood. And so I'm going to give you the layman's version of this from my perspective, which is, and we do have one more meeting. I should preface this by saying the supervisors have, treatment plant supervisors have one more meeting next Wednesday before our joint study session. So if anything changes post that meeting, I will certainly make the council aware prior to walking into the meeting on the 23rd. But the good news from the outcome of that is that the nitrogen loading requirement, which had been proposed at 10 milligrams per liter, if I'm getting my numbers right, was up to 15 milligrams per liter. There was no change on the, from I believe the existing phosphorus discharge from what they had proposed to what went in. But what that really means for us in our treatment plant is we don't have to make changes until our permit renewal, which we anticipate would be in 2015 or 2016. At that time, we would, obviously, as part of that renewal, we would get the capital costs, we would build that into our permit renewal of the implementation time. The question that the two councils had previously discussed around the UV, it probably makes no sense right now to do a capital project now and then do another capital project in 2015/16. We believe that we can meet, well, under the current permit, we are not violating those permits. So the question of whether or not UV is, to install UV, is the appropriate timing for that question is probably when we have that permit renewal and we're already making those capital changes. My belief, and I think that of staff, is that UV is the right thing to do at the appropriate time. And so the question of implementation of that UV is really a question that can be deferred up until this 2015, 2016. When we get out to the Tier 3 items, that was the huge dollar amount when we had that previous joint study session. It was whatever billion of improvements. That is still out there, but it is most likely in the 2025, 26 range.
That was statewide.
Yes, that's statewide, yes. There's so much unknown between now and then. I mean, if you have a crystal ball on telling me what's going to happen then let's go make some investments and I'll fly you to Vegas. So it's important to continue to focus on or acknowledge and follow what's occurring there. I'm not minimizing that, but in terms of having to actually do something now, I don't believe that there's an action by the councils necessary in that arena. The third piece that is still out there is there is a consortium of, I believe, about 44 treatment plants that are impacted with this regulation that is looking at their legal options to move forward. And we, at our last supervisors meeting, directed our legal counsel to stay in contact and keep ourselves as part of that consortium. To the extent that we actually get into a lawsuit, obviously, Kirsten could make that presentation to the council and get your blessing before we actually go. But there are some, and I don't remember what they are off the top of my head, I might have them written down, but there are some, probably some strong legal alternatives or backing that we have to go after the state and the state regs. And we are still waiting to hear what the EPA's response to the governor's letter is, and to my knowledge, we haven't heard back from the governor on how the executive order letter that was requested as well. So we're still waiting.
That was my question,
Okay.
is on the governor's
Yep.
position. So-
Yeah, I think the executive order is an internal administrative thing. If he chooses not to take action, it's not worth the ink that's on there. I think the issue at hand really is what's going on with the EPA's statement, because as you heard from Steve, from the state guy, this is imminent from the EPA. We're trying to get ahead of the curve so we control it, et cetera, et cetera. And so I believe what the attempt was to find out what's the level of truth in that statement. And obviously, it's a lot deeper than just that. But the good news in all of this is we believe that we can defer any capital investment until 2015, 2016.
Is the consortium at all looking at the U.S. congressional and Senate representation from the state of Colorado to take a look at the EPA's level of responsibility and accountability on the fact that they can promulgate these requirements without thinking through how does implementation occur or what the cost of those are, and to have some sort of cost effectiveness, cost efficiency as part of that. And I would encourage the consortium, or through you, to take it to the consortium to say, hey, let's at least get our senators.
I cannot speak to the consortium. I can tell you that the Colorado Municipal League has been lobbying hard, and I think when Councilman Beckman was at the National League of Cities conference, that was one of the specific discussions with our two state congressional federal senators. And so, yes, and they are staying on it because there are, as I said, there's 44 treatment plants that are impacted, which represent a much larger number of jurisdictions.
And the question is, can they single out certain plants as opposed to all of the plants?
Yes. And that is one of the, so some of the legal arguments, no defined need, and I'm not using legal terms, so I apologize, but no defined need. We believe that the statute does not allow for segregation of discharge groups. It does specifically say in the potable water side, but not in the treatment side. So there are those kind of things that are out there that give us at least some opportunity for a legal recourse if that's the direction that the collective group ultimately decides to go. So if anyone wants copies of these, I can certainly pass them out, but this will be a topic of discussion for the 23rd as well. Thanks,
Well,
sorry.
yeah, I think Phil was definitely going down the path of the cost-benefit analysis. I didn't see a lot in there about that, but that's been consistently sort of the message, and you mentioned what Councilmember Beckman, at the meeting at NLC, but pretty clearly, cost-benefit analysis is part and parcel of the whole thing. But the increase from 10 to 15 milligrams of nitrogen is in an absolute sense, a 50% improvement. But what do we do today? I don't recall the number of our current load. The UV issue is completely something, doesn't have anything to do with nitrogen. It has just to do with disinfection, and so that's, in my mind, a completely separate decision point.
Other than the fact that we can defer it,
Are
to
more or
our
less
permit
doing
renewal.
right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the nitrogen is off the top of my head. What that impact is. The tier 1, Jennifer, don't quote me on these numbers because I'm going to get them all wrong, but nor should the council write these down. But
You probably shouldn't say them on TV.
Maybe you shouldn't say that.
The number is divided by, all right, they're doable numbers. But again, so on the cost-benefit part, one of the things we've heard from David Robbins, and I think he said it to the councils as well, is our rates, when the EPA looks at these, they are looking at national averages. We are so low that there's no sympathy gained in that argument. And so it is just something for us to keep in mind, that they're looking at these national numbers. They don't, and we're like,
Well, and
down there.
while I appreciate the comment in terms of the EPA's procedures and processes, I'll respectfully disagree that their issues are not our issues. I mean, if they want to give us $40 million to make the upgrades to the plant, great, let's go. But given that we're talking about.
We are talking about the federal government here.
Exactly. But given that, whatever the nitrogen level we're at today, I won't go off the deep end, so to speak, but.
Thank you.
There's a legitimate question as to whether we're the source of this stuff as far as what they're trying to accomplish in the first place.
And what the councilman is raising is a great issue. These are point discharge calculations.
They're easy to monitor.
And as everyone knows, they're not only easy, they're the only ones you can monitor, because you can't monitor general runoff that's coming from natural land under natural flows. That's obviously why the federal government and the state is regulating us, because they have an ability to actually control it. That's no different than legislative action that this council might do, and we can regulate the number of chickens, but we can't regulate the number of eggs.
But that's not a good reason for sticking our ratepayers with.
We can tax them. No, yes, and I don't want to debate my own council on the values of this. I'm passing along, this is where we're at. I personally think that this is good news, because A, it defers it, and we still have an option on the legal alternative that we can take.
Strategically,
that may either defer this completely or eliminate that impact. Or
Where are our partners on that? Same?
I'm sorry?
Inglewood.
Inglewood, yes.
Are they the same?
That's.
Do they feel the same
Did
way?
they feel the same way? You're going to find out on the 23rd.
That's a teaser. Tune in.
Yes, tune in.
And our
but-
April
but that's
23rd
the
joint session is not televised, right?
It will be in Littleton, it is not televised.
It will
I'm sorry, it'll be Inglewood, maybe Sheridan.
Straight.
I don't know. It'll be in one, no, it's not here, which is why, it is a Monday, remind all of you.
At the
23rd.
council chambers, right? Their chambers, right?
Yes,
They televise their own meetings, don't they?
they do
So
not.
we may be able to get a copy of it and upload it onto ours. And
No,
I'll
they
check
don't
into that.
televise.
They don't
Oh, they
televise.
don't?
No.
Okay, well, never mind.
No. So, but Jerry, I don't know exactly where they're at on that, so.
Thank you.
I think that the supervisory staff from both organizations are in alignment with it, but I can't speak for the council.
So say again, since it won't be televised, it's on April 23rd at
The Inglewood City Council chambers
times
at 6
At
PM.
6.
And I
Okay,
don't know
Bruce
what
and
the
Bruce.
detailed agenda will be yet, but the two items are the Humane Society and the treatment plan.
Bruce?
Is there any thought about putting together a war chest for either lobbying or legal costs as this thing progresses and to begin to develop it now?
Not at this point, not that I've been party to. We haven't discussed it at the supervisors meeting. I don't know where, how coalesced that group really has become. The last time we met, I don't remember the date, but it was shortly after the March meeting, so I think it was, people were still digesting the ramification. I know, I knew it when I said it, but again, we may have more of an update after next Wednesday when we meet.
That might be an unexpected cost that
Sure.
transcends operational needs.
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you for the update. You and I did chat about this, but given the magnitude of this issue, even, albeit it's out in the future at some point in time, I think it's extremely important that we stay well-informed about this, and if you can do this
We'll-
periodically and just keep us
Absolutely.
apprised as to what's going on at these meetings, I think is excellent information.
Yep, happy to.
Broadly
Yep.
speaking. Thank you.
So, you're very welcome. And that's all, Mayor.
That's it, adjourned.
Hey.